Good morning, everybody. Good to see you again. You want to call the roll, Cassandra, please?
Of course. Secretary Chaudhry
Here,
is
present.
present. Mr. Derenberg is present. Vice Chair Eberhard is present. Chuck Boyd as designee for Secretary Flora.
Present.
Mr. Gibbons is absent. Ms. Lala.
Present.
Dr. Wright is absent. And Chair Casemeyer.
Here. Thank you.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Cassandra, you want to tell us about the revisions that looks like we have?
Yes, Mr. Chair. A new agenda was published yesterday afternoon. There were minor revisions to item 2B, contract awards, to item 3, Worcester County Public Schools MOU, and that was just a correction to the title. None of the content changed. And a minor change to item 10, just to properly name the project type. We also added public testimony at the end for the one public comment that you're going to have today. We received that written testimony yesterday.
Okay. So we do have some public comment this morning. Is Mr. Roth on yet, Sandra? Or
Mr. Roth just came in, Mr. Chair.
okay. I want to introduce Mr. Drew Roth, who I believe is going to talk about the Howard County Capital Improvement Program. Mr. Roth?
That's correct.
Welcome. Anytime you're ready.
Okay, good morning. My name is Drew Roth. I live in Elkridge, where we have no high school. I asked that the IAC direct the Howard County Public School System to reconsider the proposed renovations and expansions of Oakland Mills Middle School and Oakland Mills High School. In both cases, the schools are poorly located and cannot be fully enrolled with students who live nearby at their current capacity, much less with expanded capacity. Oakland Mills Middle School is currently under-enrolled at slightly above 80% utilization. Oakland Mills High School is currently fully enrolled, but fewer than 900 students of the 1,200 seat capacity live near the school. The rest are bused in from Elkridge in the Route 1 corridor. Both projects cost as much as a new school would cost, and both projects propose filling the new seats with even more students bused in from Elkridge in the rapidly growing Route 1 corridor. Adding school capacity far from the communities where the students live places those communities at a disadvantage over the long term. Every elementary school in the Route 1 corridor is eligible for Title I support. The Route 1 kids getting bused long distances to distant schools are all from socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. It would be far more appropriate to accommodate the growth along Route 1 by building schools along Route 1 while closing and consolidating schools in Columbia. This would better align school capacity with residential populations, resulting in much more equitable treatment of all students and greatly reducing transportation costs. Replacing Oakland Mills High School with a new school along Route 1 in Elkridge provides far more benefit to far more people. A high school in the new South Elkridge Civic District across from the library could be entirely filled with students who live less than 3 miles away. There would be a huge walker population. There would be no need to bus students in from different areas. Furthermore, closing Oakland Mills High School would not create long bus rides for any current Oakland Mills students. Oakland Mills is close to 5 other high schools, closer in fact than Elkridge students at the north end of Route 1 are to any high school. New policies should be implemented to ensure that going forward, schools are equitably distributed across all regions of the county. Any renovation or expansion that approaches the cost of a new school should be treated as a new school construction projects. Such projects should undergo an analysis of alternative sites using the existing school site selection policy. Geographic equity should be explicitly included in any equity framework or lens applied to capital planning. All parts of the county should receive comparable levels of service from the public schools. Investments in new school capacity should be targeted towards regions that lack capacity and have the greatest student miles traveled to their assigned schools. Regions should be defined by the existing regional planning districts used by the County Department of Planning and Zoning for required state reporting. The current policy targets capacity improvements to the school in which a growing region is assigned, even if the growing region is far from its assigned school. And lastly, new sources of funding for school construction, such as Build to Learn, should use the same prioritization rules as existing funding sources so that all regions have a fair opportunity to receive a share of new funding sources. Thank you. That's all I have, and I appreciate the
Mr. Roth.
opportunity to testify.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Roth? Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention, and we appreciate you joining us today.
Okay.
Thank you. You know, Cassandra, I don't know if it's my computer, but my screen, the top layer of people, sort of heads are cut off. Is that something that is specific to my screen?
I
Anyway.
think it is, Mr. Chair. I'm not experiencing that.
Yeah, okay.
I'm seeing the same thing actually on Zoom currently.
Okay, well, we'll do the best we can do.
Oh, I got it. It's the message at the top about recording. If you click OK, it disappears and you'll get the full
good.
view.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, Alex, you want to give us your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, good morning, members of the commission. My first update today is about the agency's continuing outreach to and dialogues with key sets of stakeholders. As always, our staff is maintaining a constant sequence of monthly meetings with the primary points of contact in each of the 24 school districts' facilities management staffs. The agendas for these meetings is many pages long as we track and discuss the many projects and layers of work that connect the state and the school districts. But there are many other outreach efforts also going on. This Friday, many of our staff will be at the Maryland School for the Blind for our near quarterly all LEA meetings, in which IAC staff and partner agency representatives spend the morning with all the LEAs together, covering hot topics of interest to all, updates on state funding and programs, and we hear from all the LEAs together. And then we tour the new facility in which we're meeting. It rotates around the state. Also this Friday, I will be visiting the Board of Directors of the Maryland Association of Counties, or MACO, at their board retreat to provide an update on key topics as well as to dialogue with county leaders on any issues relating to school construction and facilities management that they might wish to discuss. This is part of my greatly expanded outreach to county governments that's bearing very positive fruit for all parties, as we have seen with Worcester County in the MOU on today's agenda. Finally, I've been participating in 3 local work groups over the past months, made up of LEAs and county officials together in 3 counties, Frederick, Calvert, and Howard, in which the local officials have been addressing their facilities needs, resources issues, and potential solutions to meet those needs. In the Frederick work group, Commissioner Derenberg represented the IAC, and that's 6 meetings to date, and I supported with data from the IAC. These work groups have been doing excellent work on the key questions that face many LEAs and counties and the state, and I'm appreciative that the IAC's expertise has been tapped and included in that work. The second topic I'll mention today is our ongoing fiscal year 2026 CIP process. It's going well overall, but it has really demonstrated the heightened pressures on LEAs, counties, and the state this year, pressures that are as great as we've perhaps ever seen. A number of LEAs, both large and small, have communicated to IAC staff that those LEAs are, for lack of better technical terminology, hitting the wall financially. I'm not going to mention or single out, point out specific LEAs, but it's really across the board. All LEAs are struggling to cobble together sufficient funding for local and state money combined to cover the cost of their highest priority, most urgent projects within affordable and practical construction timeframes. These affordability challenges have resulted in projects not always moving forward when stakeholders expected or desire them to move, resulting in community frustration showing in articles in the news. Multiple examples of that in just recent weeks about projects where certain parts of the project have been postponed, like auditoriums, and projects have been pushed from a scheduled year to an out year to make other projects able to complete on time. And the local jurisdictions have been grappling with these pressures in multiple ways, including the work groups I mentioned. But those work groups are working on policies that will not deliver additional dollars quickly. So our CIP this year will remain a thorny and challenging one in which we know that we will not be able to satisfy anywhere near the total set of needs. I've been conveying these needs in multiple forums to state leadership in the past months, including presenting our staff's estimates of long-term annual funding needs to the Capital Debt Affordability Committee, and submitting to the Department of Budget and Management the current list of top priority CIP projects that staff expect will need funding this year in order to proceed on schedule without forward funding. Those projects amount to a good amount of state funding greater than the assumed level of $280 million that we've used in our target allocations this year. The total number might be more in the mid 400 millions. But we have no idea what the chances are of the IAC receiving appropriations sufficient to fund all of those projects. In addition, staff have received indications from a large number of our school districts that they intend to submit amendments in the next 2 weeks to their CIP requests, some of which constitute wholesale changes to their October submissions due to the fact that our October submission deadline occurs in many cases before local decisions are made on projects and/or funding. This suggests that the state may benefit from reconsidering whether there's value in the IAC making preliminary approvals in December versus simply providing the local jurisdictions the time they need to more fully develop their CIP submissions in a useful form, and instead simply move directly to a 90% CIP approval in February in future years. In addition, LEAs are becoming accustomed to the IAC's new business management system, and that's a learning curve that takes some time for everybody to work through. IAC staff have been providing extensive training opportunities to LEAs and doing one-on-one walkthrough sessions with LEA staff to help them learn the new business management system. In any case, the staff recommendations for the 75% CIP preliminary round that we'll bring to you for approval next month on December 19th will be very preliminary and subject to significant change between then and the 90% round in February. So this is a bit of a kind of a heads up and an orientation to the fact that this year's CIP is a challenging one, and we'll all have to do the best we can with the preliminary round in December, and then move forward, continuing to improve all the way through the final approvals in May. The last thing I'll mention today is the comprehensive maintenance plans. By law, each LEA must annually update its comprehensive maintenance plan and submit it to the IAC by October 15th. This comprehensive maintenance plan, or CMP, is important because it gives the state information about specifically how each LEA plans to go about maintaining its portfolio of facilities. Along with the IAC's maintenance effectiveness assessments, it's part of how the state sees whether the LEAs are taking proper care of the facilities in which the state has invested significant capital resources over the decades and will invest more over the coming decades. This year, we've received 22 out of 24 CMPs to date. We're expecting Garrett and Somerset counties to submit theirs in the next week or two. So we'll need to bring those two to you next month for acceptance after the October 15th deadline. Over the coming 2 to 3 months, IAC staff will be evaluating each CMP against our list of required ingredients and rubric, and will provide each LEA feedback on the contents of their CMP so that they can incorporate that feedback into their portfolio management practices and their future CMPs. And of course, following the law, if staff see that an LEA is not conducting key maintenance activities that are widely known to be necessary in properly maintaining school facilities, then staff will provide that information to you for your consideration in awarding state funding to that LEA's projects. This connection between maintenance and state capital funding is a long-standing part of state law around school construction funding, but it's arguably even more essential as a consideration these days as the gap between state and local resources and facilities needs continues to become more challenging. No one wants to hear a lecture on this topic, I know, but with preventive maintenance costing on average 1/6 of what emergency repairs cost, much less the lost value resulting from forced or early replacement of building systems that have expired prematurely due to insufficient maintenance, no LEA county or the state can afford to fail to invest adequately in maintenance because the resulting costs on the capital side would simply be unaffordable on all levels. This makes the CMPs more meaningful than ever, and I look forward to sharing with you the results of the staff's evaluations of the CMPs in the spring. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for your patience with this long report, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have or move to the consent agenda.
Any questions for Alex? Thank you, Alex. Yeah, go ahead on to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today's consent agenda includes administrative items, including the October 10th meeting minutes, contract awards, revisions to previously approved contracts, and a reversion of funds on one project, pass-through grant request, site approval, and an informational item, change of educational function for grade reconfigurations in Garrett County. I don't have any items to focus specifically on this time, but stand for any questions you might have.
Do I hear a motion we approve the consent agenda? Ms. Everhart, second by Mr. Derenberg. Questions about the consent agenda? Mr. Derenberg.
So, Alex, I have a question about the contracts awarded with Anne Arundel County and the Lindale Middle School.
Mhm.
So it looks like we're spending close to $370,000 to move trailers to the site. I guess to house students while they're doing the air conditioning. But we have 300 open seats in that school. In the adjacent schools, we have about 1,200 open seats. And was this the best use of funds to cover that? I mean, what happens to the trailers afterwards? Who owns the trailers? Would it be cheaper to lease trailers to bring in there? But it seems like a lot of money when we have such a tight budget. You know, it opens up about 120, 150 seats additional.
Right. No, thank you, Mr. Derenberg. Great question. This is a complex issue. I would say in a nutshell, my opinion is that this is the best temporary solution available at the moment. And the reason is these are existing trailers or portables that will be moved there. It is really a temporary capacity need that is not easily met by redistricting in the short term to move students to another school where available seats might be. In addition, in doing the project, even though there may be classrooms that are underutilized in that school, that doesn't mean that there's enough space to completely move all students out of the area that needs to be worked on, and that it could be phased in a way to do the HVAC work and move the students around the building or out to another site. Moving the teachers, moving the staff supports, all the complexities that go along with the specific students' needs. Even, for example, what would happen if there are students who need special services under the law, and those are not available in the nearby school where there's some extra space available. For the kind of the continuity and the cohesiveness of the educational program and service delivery, it's far better generally to serve the students there in their home school, not bus them to another location. However, what this does is this brings up the larger question of, is the school district fully utilizing or efficiently utilizing its available space to meet the student demand that it has? And Anne Arundel County Public Schools does have a bit lower utilization in its middle schools than in its elementary and high schools. And that is a larger picture issue that we're talking with Anne Arundel County Public Schools about as they work to redistrict. They've done an extensive series of complex and challenging redistricting over the last 2 years, particularly. It's kind of a long process because it really is an ongoing process in portfolio management, managing supply and demand. Are there available seats at middle school level? nearby, yes. I don't have the specific numbers right in front of me to talk about those. However, are they likely usable to meet the specific need in the time frame? Functionally, I doubt it. But I hope that gives a bit of a nutshell. Yes, further question?
Well, I just think, we're suffering from such a budget crisis. We do have to kind of look to see where we can save, and moving portables at close to $400,000 may be a good start. Especially when you do have 300 seats in that class, in that school. How could it be staged? Brooklyn has 392. Corin, I think I said, is 406. Marley has 225. And they're all adjacent facilities. It's just, we know we have budget crisis. We just have to figure out a way so it's back in some places, I think. We want air conditions in schools, absolutely.
Yeah, completely hear you on that. I would submit that there are master plan considerations around these available seats that need to be considered now for future project solutions. I don't know that there's a way to utilize an alternative to what's proposed at this moment that would make sense and function well for the students there. I think in a sense, just to oversimplify, I see this as, yes, costly, but not really something that that the IAC at least is in a position to tell Anne Arundel County Public Schools that they should be looking at an alternative here. But I think that there could be things done to avoid this kind of thing in the future, and that we'll certainly be focusing on that with Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and we'll absolutely pay attention to how can we help them best utilize available capacity and make sure that they don't have unused capacity that's costing the county school district and the state money in the long haul.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you for that question.
So you think you've studied all the possibilities and alternatives, and this is still the best solution under the circumstances, Alex?
At this time, I don't see any better answer.
Okay.
I agree that I would prefer that this not be an answer frequently used necessarily, but there isn't really a better thing to do at this time in this situation.
Okay. Any other questions for Alex for the consent agenda? Secretary Chowdhury.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. On the contracts, consent agenda, item B, just wanted to confirm that the Tench Tillman roof project was withdrawn.
That's correct.
Okay, great. And not that I have an issue with it. I think we're just going through additional approvals on it before it'll come back for approval. Got it. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Sure. All in favor of the consent agenda, raise your hand or say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3, Worcester County Public Schools Memorandum of Understanding and Built to Learn funding request. Oh, by the way, before we begin this, I should have thanked Mr. Derenberg earlier for attending all those meetings in Frederick County. It's really great that you're giving up your time, and we appreciate it. Okay,
It's actually a very, very eye-opening thing to do. I'm thank God Alex was there because he had all the answers. but it's great to see the needs and how they're trying to handle them and all that stuff. So,
well, thanks a lot for your help.
You're welcome.
Item 3, Alex. This has been a great
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I am very pleased to bring to the commission, finally, after many months of work with Worcester County and Worcester County Public Schools, this memorandum of understanding and the associated request to award Built to Learn Act funds to the first project of 2 in this MOU for replacement of Buckingham Elementary School, and then subsequently a renovation or replacement of Berlin Intermediate School. And this is the culmination of a process of really impressive collaboration and discussion with the stakeholders in Worcester County and the state, county, and school district coming together to find the best possible solution to a challenging situation there. And I appreciate very much the commission's input and support along the way to get us to this point, and applaud the county and school district and Board of Ed folks for coming together to bring this to all parties. This MOU has been approved by Worcester County Commissioners and the Board of Education. So the third party final approval is for the IAC. And with this approval today, we will be able to execute the MOU and have you, Mr. Chair, sign it and then send it back over for signature by the county and Board of Ed. This agreement is a three-party agreement specifying the responsibilities of the three parties around the proposed two-school capital project package to replace Buckingham Elementary School and replacement or full renovation of Berlin Intermediate. It is the first ever MOU between the IAC and local jurisdictions that specifies conditions for specific LEA capital projects. You know, the IAC typically calculates and awards state funds on a single project basis. So to set the parameters for two projects in conjunction, especially when the two projects will be executed not at the same time, but sequentially in future years, an agreement is needed to link the two projects and make clear how each will proceed up front in advance of the actual project approvals and funding awards by the IAC. This MOU has a number of benefits. The first is it reduces uncertainty around the next facility renewal projects that Worcester County Public Schools will execute and that the state will fund in coming years, thereby reducing the chance that these two high needs projects will be supplanted by other capital projects. Second, it saves the county and the state money compared with alternatives and past practice by limiting the square footage per student of the two projects to a level similar to comparable recent projects elsewhere in the state, thereby controlling both the upfront construction costs and the long-term facilities operations and maintenance costs that the county and the state will incur. It also establishes a time frame in which the proposed Buckingham Elementary and Berlin Intermediate projects must be completed, which will result in the avoidance of cost inflation that would affect both the county and the state. It also preserves a greater amount of projected available county and state capital funds for other high needs capital projects in coming years by limiting how much Worcester County Public Schools can spend on these two projects. It commits the county to providing the local share of the project costs when the projects will require the funding. And finally, it commits the state to a certain amount of funding for each project, subject, of course, to the availability in coming years of state capital appropriations and future statewide project demand. I don't see any costs or downsides of this MOU to the state. It really is a win-win-win for the county, the school district, and the state. And it has helped us bring Worcester County Public Schools forward onto a great track for replacing two of their old 1970s buildings that are very much, let's say, outdated educationally and heavily worn and depleted despite great maintenance efforts, and helps put them in a good position to move forward to other projects in following years that their portfolio has next in line. I will now read the motion, which is to approve the memorandum of understanding between the IAC, Worcester County, and Worcester County Public Schools for a two-school capital project package to replace Buckingham Elementary School and to replace or fully renovate to a like new condition the Berlin Intermediate School. Further, to authorize the chair to execute the MOU on behalf of the IAC. And finally, to award Built to Learn program funding in the amount of $5,599,322 to Worcester County Public Schools for the Buckingham Elementary School Replacement Project. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Do I hear a motion first to that effect? Mr. Ehrenberg and Ms. Everhart seconds. Questions for Alex about this MOU? Secretary Chaudhry.
No questions, but just wanted to share my sincere thanks to Alex and Mr. Chair for the efforts to work with the county and the local school board to address it. This was a big concern with the community there. So very grateful that we were able to work out an MOU and a deal that made sense for everyone. And Alex, as you said, a win-win-win for everyone. So very happy that we're able to support the community there. So thank you very much for your hard work behind the scenes.
Thank you for your thoughts. Yeah, I too wanted to congratulate Alex and the staff for doing a great job where, everybody came away feeling good that we reached a conclusion that was fair for all. And can't say much more than that. That's what negotiations are all about. So we appreciate it, Alex. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Item 4, enrollment trends and projections. Jamie and Graham.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. It is good to see you all. I'm Jamie Bridges, Planning Manager. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Jamie Bridges, Planning Manager for the IAC, and I am joined today by Graham Twibell, Regional Planner for the IAC, to deliver item 4, a presentation on the enrollment trends and enrollment projections. Item 4 can be found on page 52 of your meeting agenda. Next slide, please. Over the next 15 minutes, Graham and I will go over how we use enrollment projections, the Maryland Department of Planning's enrollment projections, how we project enrollment, the local education agencies or LEA's enrollment projections, and we will save some time for questions. Next slide, please. Before we go further, though, with enrollment projections and the stories that the projections tell, I do want to spend a little time on what we do with the enrollment projections. Why do the enrollment projections matter? At the local level, the LEA's main objective is to deliver to a population of students the educational programs and services needed for the students to graduate high school ultimately. To meet this objective, the LEAs need educational spaces. For the LEAs, it is important to meet the demand for educational programs and services or projected enrollment with the supply of educational spaces or seats for each school and for all schools in the LEA. And because each LEA has limited resources to cover the cost to not only construct schools, but also to operate and maintain them, it is important for each LEA to provide the number of seats needed and no more. At the state level, where we also have limited resources, we use the projected enrollments and state-rated capacities of a project school and the schools adjacent to the project school to determine eligible enrollment. Then, as you know, we use it to determine the allocation of state funds to each project. As you can see on that graphic, we take eligible enrollment, we multiply it by the gross area baseline square footage per student, we multiply that by the cost per square foot, and we multiply that by the state cost share. Because the gross area per student, the cost per square foot, and the state cost share are fixed, the eligible enrollment is the main driver of the allocation of state funds to each project. We also use enrollment projections to tell the stories of our future. I'm going to tell enrollment projection stories on a large scale from the perspective of Allison Dara and his team at the Maryland Department of Planning. MDP has been developing enrollment projections for each LEA in the state for longer than I can remember and is pretty darn good at it. The median absolute percent error, or MAPE, for the 2023 MDP projections is just which I think is impressive given the wild socioeconomic landscape of the last 5 years. Al has told these stories to us in the past and will join us after the presentation to answer questions. So now on to the projections, the MDP projections, which can be found in the MDP report, K-12 Public School Enrollment Projections 2024 to 2033. Next slide, please. First, let's talk about where we have been. On September 30th, 2019, we had 876,810 K-12 students enrolled in public schools in Maryland. Then, of course, came COVID, and on September 30th, 2020, we had 858,519 K-12 students enrolled in public schools in Maryland. And we had even less on September 30, 2021. Of course, we expected them to come back, but after 4 years, most of them still have not come back. Kids just don't disappear, right? Unless you ask them to please clean up their bedroom. So where can we find them? Next slide, please. So we know that the number of students in homeschools increased a lot in 2020, from 27,754 in 2019 to 42,632, about 54% in 2020. While students enrolled in non-public schools increased a little from 99,693 in 2019 to 102,415, or about 3% in 2020. I think we all expected to see a rebound in public school enrollment in 2021, but we see that 2021 looks about the same. Again, I think we all expected a rebound in 2022 also. And while K-12 public school enrollment did increase a little, we can see that while the number of homeschool students did decrease, the number of students enrolled in non-public schools increased. We don't have homeschool enrollments from 2023 or 2024 yet, but when we do, we will share them with you. We know we have had this conversation in years past, and it is always a good one. Next slide, please. So let us now talk about where we are headed. First, though, how do we know where we are headed? We must project enrollment. Here we see a list of some of the inputs used to project enrollment. So how do we do that? In general, we want to project the number of K students and then use grade progression ratios, which represent in and out migration, to march each of these cohorts of K students through to 12th grade. Between 2015 and 2020, we had seen a decline in live births. And of course, the COVID pandemic amplified that trend. But we have seen an increase in live births since COVID in 2021 through 2023. Between 1980 and 2015, we had seen a net positive migration in Maryland, but we had seen net negative migration between 2015 and 2022 due to negative domestic migration, or rather people moving out of Maryland more than they move in. However, in 2023, we see that we are back in black due to a positive international migration. So we still have more people domestically leaving Maryland than moving in, but we have more people moving in internationally than leaving internationally. Next slide, please. So here we see the projected annual change in K-12 public school enrollment through 2033. First, we see a second decline due to COVID. We know that the first one was because during COVID, school-age children were shifted from public school to homeschools and non-public schools. We expect to see a second one because during COVID, parents had less babies, and those babies would be school-age children in 26 and 27. Then, into the out years, we expect a low rate of enrollment growth. For example, the highest year-to-year growth is expected between 2029 and 30, but the additional 2920 students in 2030 would be just 0.3% growth of the total enrollment from 2029. Next slide, please. So here is the bottom line. This is table 3 from the MDP report on K-12 public school enrollment projections, 2024 to 2033. Again, for the LEAs, we see the lowest 10-year projected growth rate is negative 11.5%, and the highest is plus 13.6%. That is a range of a little more than 25% across the state of Maryland. And for the state as a whole, we see 10-year projected growth of just 12,408 students, or 1.4%. We will see, will the birth rates continue to fall? Will they continue to grow? Will international migration continue to rise? Now I will pass the mic to Graham, who will tell enrollment projection stories on a smaller scale with enrollment projections compiled from each of the LEA's 2024 educational facility master plans. Next slide, please.
Okay, Jamie, pardon me for jumping in here a moment. Graham's had some technical problems with his connection. I'm going to check quickly. Graham, were you able to get on yet?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think I have audio but not video. I apologize sincerely.
No problem.
Okay, go ahead, Graham. Thank you.
Sure, no worries. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. And thank you, Jamie. So to continue, in addition to the state's enrollment projections developed by the Department of Planning, each LEA annually updates their own enrollment projections as part of the development of their annual Educational Facilities Master Plan, or EFMP. While MDP uses birth and mortality data, migration trends, enrollment trends, and information regarding economic development and other historical trends to inform their model, for LEAY projection totals for K-12, LEAs themselves develop projections down to the individual school level and for individual grades for 10 years. This knowledge of planned program changes, this involves many of the same factors evaluated by MDP, as well as grade succession ratios and knowledge of planned program changes and projects. These more detailed projections help inform LEA's plans for specific projects and are reviewed by the IAC as part of the determination of project funding eligibility that Jamie mentioned previously. Importantly, the detailed school scale projections also differ from the state projections in that they include pre-kindergarten projections. Projecting pre-kindergarten differs greatly from the development of K-12 in that enrollment in these programs is voluntary and their availability differs widely within and across jurisdictions. LEA's management of their pre-K projections includes differences in class sizes, whether they are half-day or full-day programs, whether they're offered for only 4-year-olds or include 3-year-old class offerings, and whether students may attend outside of their regular elementary attendance area. I'm happy to provide more information and answer questions on this topic, but first we'd like to kind of describe what we see from the latest LEA projections. Next slide, please. We know from the table shown a few slides prior that MDP projects a small amount of growth overall statewide in the next 10 years for K-12, about 1.5%. The statewide trend, however, varies, with some LEAs projecting substantial growth of 10% or more and others projected for similarly substantial decline. The detailed LEA projections allow us to look at how these projections vary around the state and within different school attendance areas, but also at each set of grade levels for elementary, middle, and high schools and how they may differ from one another. There are a number of interesting items we can take from looking at each of these maps, some of which I would like to point out, as well as caution while reviewing these figures. If we flip back and forth between slides 10 and 11 showing the high school map and the middle school map, we see that many of the areas that are projected to decline in terms of high school enrollment, such as those on the Eastern Shore or the northern area of Frederick County, these same regions do not have a large change projected for middle school or may even be projected to increase enrollment at the middle school level. In general, when viewed geographically, the trend based on cohorts at different grade levels does not necessarily match the overall trend for the district. And this is likely due to some of the longer term trends Jamie described in terms of birth rates as the cohorts pass through the system. And in some areas could also be due to private school enrollment and homeschooling differences at different grade levels. Importantly, though, the LEAs may need to manage these spikes in either direction within an area as students move through the system, which can present capacity problems at individual elementary, middle, and high schools that we kind of heard earlier on the meeting today. If we move on to slide 12, showing projections at the elementary level, we see there can be a lot of variability in growth within an LEA at the elementary level, with some areas projected for growth and others projected to decline in a single LEA. This is particularly true in counties within the central Maryland region, where growth and development can be really variable and have those localized spikes. Looking at the map and interpreting changes in projected enrollment, however, could be potentially misleading, given that LEAs may project increases or decreases in enrollment within an individual zone, not solely based upon population growth, but by taking into account planned program changes. Changes to the educational program are particularly important to consider when looking at the picture of LEA projections in light of pre-K and the expansion under Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Many LEAs project to expand enrollment for their elementary schools simply by adding new pre-K or growing their existing pre-K programs. And they may be planning to add capacity through additions or through replacements of schools that are larger and increase capacity. This means that an area that is flat in terms of population growth may still be projected to have elementary school growth, simply due to the addition of 3- and 4-year-old students to the existing K-5 population. In less common cases, LEAs may shift the location of regional programs or adjust their class sizes within different zones, which could cause a change in the long-term projected enrollment in a zone that differs from the population growth trend. Finally, I just want to note that there are some areas on these maps that we see where a projected trend has not been shown, and this could be due to a planned change of attendance zone, due to a completely new school, consolidation of schools, or some outstanding data that's still in development. Next slide, please. If we zoom back out to look at the district-wide projections provided by the LEAs, which include pre-K, we see that while the state projected 1.5% for K-12, the LEAs projected almost 5% growth in enrollment with the inclusion of pre-K in the next 10 years. If we compare pre-K growth to K-12 growth, the planned pre-K expansion in most cases substantially exceeds regular K-12 growth in percentage terms. Next slide, please. Our conclusions from the latest projections are that total K-12 enrollment is projected for slight growth, which is primarily due to net positive migration into the state. Growth projected by the LEAs exceeds that projected by the state when we simply compare K-12 totals, but this projected growth rate is further increased by the inclusion of pre-K, which is anticipated to grow substantially due to the expansion of program offerings under Blueprint. Blueprint will mean more public school enrollment of 3- and 4-year-olds and a need to plan for space needs to accommodate these students. Now, Jamie and I will stand for comments and questions, and apologies again for my technical issue.
No problem. Questions for Graham and Jamie? I can't see anybody. Do you have a question, to speak up? Any questions? Well, Jamie and Graham, we thank you. It was a very informative presentation, and I really enjoyed reading it, to tell you the truth.
Mr. Chair, if I could add one comment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. As Jamie and Graham described, the greatest expansion of demand is expected to be at the pre-K level, primarily as a result of the Blueprint's mandate to LEAs to expand the number of students in 3- and 4-year-old grade bands that they should serve. As we all know, adding the capacity to serve those additional students requires space, and there is not existing space to do that in many places. As a result, LEAs have been coming to the IAC with project requests for pre-K additions and expansions in various ways over the last 1.5 years, 2 years, and will continue to do so over the coming years. And so the IAC staff is expecting that there will be additional pressure on the CIP and remaining Built to Learn funds to satisfy, as we said previously, the multiple buckets of need, including the general growth described here for the enrollment projected to increase in places, as well as just maintaining existing condition and educational sufficiency and decarbonization. So without a separate funding source for the pre-K expansion in the capital side here, the projects to add pre-K capacity are going to be simply added to all the other capital needs that are hitting the CIP. And that's another reason why we're starting to see the pressures increasing across the state on local and state capital budgets. Over this year, IAC staff have been working with the LEAs to quantify what is the missing space needed really to truly serve the students in pre-K grades required by the blueprint. We estimated very roughly about 300 classrooms short statewide, probably about 300 million worth of capital dollars needed for that space. But that was a rough estimate, and we're working still with the LEAs this year to get a very granular look at which schools need more pre-K classrooms and where they could be placed, and what would that end up resulting in terms of projects. So we hope to have better estimates for each district in the coming months to share with you. But this is an additional pressure and a challenge for the local jurisdictions and for the state. Thank you.
So when would this need begin?
The need is existing now because under the blueprint, the LEAs should be ramping up the number of 3 and 4-year-olds that they're serving. There is a lag. There's also an expectation of private providers picking up some of the students and serving them. And in some places, those private providers do not yet exist. So there are extra pressures on the school districts to serve those students. It's very complex. We have heard from our colleagues in MSDE and the Accountability and Implementation Board about some of these issues, and are continuing to stay in touch with them to coordinate and align the IAC's policies. But the need is there. It's kicked in now. We're getting project requests related to Blueprint Pre-K now, and we're going to get more in coming years.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's move on to item 5, Aging Schools Program Administrative Procedures Guides Amendment. Cassandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. At least one LEA has expressed interest in combining ASP funds with school safety grant program funds. ASP procedures don't currently allow for that because the ASP procedures were created prior to those funds existing. IAC staff looked at the potential for combining those funds with various IAC programs, and we recommend that it is appropriate to combine ASP funds with either pass-through grant program funds or SSGP funds, but not with other programs like the Healthy School Facility Fund or the CIP, where there's a local cost share requirement. So these draft procedures take that into account and do recommend changes to allow those combinations of funds. Further, it modifies the reimbursement submission process to require LEAs to submit one reimbursement per contract instead of one reimbursement per project, which aligns with the functionality of the IAC's business management system. The motion is to amend the Administrative Procedures Guide for the Aging Schools Program to allow LEAs to combine ASP funding with certain other types of funding and to clarify requirements for reimbursement.
Do I hear a motion to that effect? Ms. Eberhardt and Mr. Boyd seconds. Questions for Cassandra? All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank
Let's
you,
go
Mr.
on to
Chair.
item 6. Healthy
So
School.
currently,
Oh.
sorry, Mr. Chair. I jumped the gun.
Okay. Healthy School Facility Fund Administrative Procedures Guide Amendment. Cassandra?
So currently the HSFF APG allows for funds to be realigned between projects only at the time of contract award. That means that an LEA really only has the opportunity to utilize those funds when contracts come in over or under budget if they have contracts that are bidding at the same time, which is not necessarily typical. This program is different than the other IAC programs because Healthy School Facility Fund funding is competitive based upon prioritization. The suggested change would allow LEAs to request additional funds for contracts that come in over if there's any HSFF funding in the statewide reserve account. I do want to take a minute to emphasize that the statewide reserve account holds funds from a number of IAC programs. We are only recommending that HSFF funds that were reverted into the statewide reserve fund be allowable for this use. LEAs would have to request the funds and show that their project costs were reasonable. And if the IAC would receive more requests at any time than it had funds to cover, the projects would be evaluated and prioritized in the same competitive priority as required in the APG. The motion is to amend the administrative procedures guides for the Healthy School Facility Fund for fiscal years 22, 23, 24, and 25 to sections 4 and 11 as presented to allow LEAs to request increases to approved projects based upon contract costs when HSFF funding is available in the statewide reserve, and to further authorize IAC staff to make non-substantive edits to the applicable sections.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Secretary Chaudhry and Ms. Eberhardt seconds. Questions for Cassandra on this motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Thank you, Cassandra. Item 7, Healthy School Facility Fund State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund revisions. Cassandra?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Several LEAs received Federal American Rescue Plan Act state and local fiscal recovery funds, which I'm going to call SLFRF funds for the purpose of a little bit of extra brevity, as a portion of their HSFF funding in fiscal years 22 and 23. A lot of those projects are coming under contract now. 6 LEAs recently had projects come in under or over their initially allocated SLFRF funding award. Out of 26 projects, 4 contracts came in over their estimated costs. The remaining 22 came in under their estimated costs. Staff are recommending increases to the 4 projects that came in over and reversions of the unneeded funds for the other 22 projects. After these realignments, there will be a total of 1.6 and some change of SLFRF funds remaining. IAC staff have consulted with the Department of Budget and Management and the state's SLFRF consultants. And after this realignment, we're recommending that the 1.6 million that is remaining be reverted to DBM for reallocation to other state priorities. The motion is to realign federal, state, and local fiscal recovery funds between awarded Healthy School Facility Fund projects as presented, and to revert $1,630,584 of current unused funds to the Maryland Department of Budget and Management. I do just want to note, Mr. Chair, that the reason we are recommending that reversion is because the SLFRF funds are federal funds, which have far more stringent requirements than our typical state funds. And the last opportunity to realign those funds is this December. By reverting them back to the Department of Budget and Management, we're allowing the state to get the best use of those funds for statewide priorities, where it's unlikely we would be able to apply them to eligible projects within the federal timeframes.
Thank you for the explanation. Do I hear a motion supporting that? Mr. Boyd makes a motion, Ms. Eberhardt seconds. Any questions to Cassandra? Mr. Derenberg?
Do we know how Logan ran over so much, like 442?
I do not have the answer to that at my fingertips, Mr. Derenberg, but I will find out and get back to you.
Thank you.
Are you okay to vote, Mr. Derenberg, or do you want to hold this? You okay? Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you, Cassandra. Item 8, FY 2023 Healthy School Facility Fund Extension Request, Baltimore County Public Schools, Owings Mills High School Air Conditioning Project. Lisa?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. Baltimore County Public Schools has requested deadline extensions for their Healthy School Facility Fund project for the air conditioning replacement at Owings Mill High School. The project received awards through HSFF in both FY 2023 and FY 2024. The design schedule for the project was delayed to allow for the second funding request in FY 2024 and for the final scope to be determined. It was BCPS's intention to bid the work as one contract, and bids recently have been received. BCPS is requesting extensions to the FY 2023 Healthy Schools Facility Fund deadlines for encumbrance of June 1st, 2024 to June 2nd, 2025, and submission of reimbursement requests of May 1st, 2025 to May 1st, 2026 to align with the FY 2024 schedule. I will now read the motion, which is to approve Baltimore County Public Schools' request to extend the FY 2023 Healthy School Facility Fund Owings Mill High School air conditioning project deadlines for encumbrance to June 2nd, 2025, and for the submission of reimbursement requests to May 1st, 2026 to align with the deadlines of the FY 2024 Healthy School Facility Fund.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to this effect? Ms. Everhart makes a motion, Mr. Boyd seconds. Questions? So what's the deadline for this SLFRF funding use?
Mr. Chair, the deadline to obligate those funds is this December. The deadline to spend the funds is December of 2026.
Okay, gotcha. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion say aye or raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 9, Built to Learn funding request, Baltimore County Public Schools, Towson High School renovation addition project. Lisa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Baltimore County Public Schools is requesting Built to Learn funding for the renovation and addition of Towson High School. The project scope includes renovation of 78,568 gross square feet, new construction of 254,953 gross square feet, and demolition of 126,745 gross square feet of the 205,313 gross square foot existing school facility to accommodate 1,739 students. Based on the LEA's requested scope and the state cost share of 57%, the maximum state allocation for the project is $91,522,000. The project was awarded $4,724,000 in design funding through the FY 2025 Capital Improvement Program, and the balance of $86,798,000 is being requested through Built to Learn funding. I will now read the motion, which is to approve Baltimore County Public Schools' request for Built to Learn construction funding for the Towson High School renovation addition project totaling $86,798,000.
Thank you, Lisa. Do I hear a motion supporting that? Ms. Everhart? Mr. Boyd seconds. Questions for Lisa about Towson High? All in favor say aye, raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 10, FY 2025 Capital Improvement Program Amendments, St. Mary's County Public Schools, Chopticon High School. Gene?
Morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Commission. IAC staff received a request from St. Mary's County Public Schools in mid-October to rescind the Chopticon High School limited renovation project after receiving recent design estimates detailing cost escalations that will be prohibitive for the LEA. This limited renovation project received LP and partial early planning and design funding in the fiscal year 2024 Capital Improvement Program. St. Mary's County Public Schools has requested to amend the fiscal year 2025 CIP to include a multi-systemic project that will replace the roof, HVAC, windows, and doors in addition to approval of the design services contract to WGM. I will now read the motion, which is to approve St. Mary's County Public Schools request to rescind the previous AE contract approvals, local planning approval, and the fiscal year 2024 CIP Project Development and Design Funding Award for the Chopticon High School Limited Renovation Project totaling $1 million, and transfer the funds to the LEA's reserve account. Amend the fiscal year 2025 CIP to include the Chopticon High School Multi-Systemic Renovation Project and award $1 million from the LEA's reserve account for project development and design services. And approve a contract for the Chopticon High School Multi-Systemic for design services to Wheeler Goodman Mask and Associates, architectural consultants for the project, with a total amount of $2,678,050 and a state share of $1 million. The local share is $1,678,000 or $1,678,050.
Thank you, Gene. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Ms. Everhart and Mr. Boyd seconds. Any questions for Gene? Secretary Chaudhry? You have a question? I see your hand up on your slide. Okay. You don't have a question?
No, no question. Sorry.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 11, FY 2024 and FY 2025 Capital Improvement Program rescissions, Howard County Public Schools. Sean?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Commission. In mid-October, IAC staff received a request from the Howard County Public School System to amend the fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025 Capital Improvement Program. The requested amendments reallocate a total of $4,836,791 from the membrane bioreactor project at Manor Woods Elementary School and West Friendship Elementary School to the Howard County Schools Public Schools Reserve Account. Due to scope changes, the LEA intends to revise their fiscal year 2026 Capital Improvement Program application by the November 29, 2024 deadline to include projects at these schools. The Manor Woods Elementary School project will be submitted as a public sewer connection project due to updated local ordinances. The West Friendship Elementary School membrane bioreactor project will be modified to reflect updated design and construction costs as determined during the design. IAC staff will evaluate these projects as part of the fiscal year 26 capital improvement process. I will now read the motion, which is to approve the rescission of the Howard County Public Schools Manor Woods Elementary School membrane bioreactor project, including a funding award of $1,667,500. The rescission of the Howard County Public Schools West Friendship Elementary School membrane bioreactor project, including a funding award of $3,159,291, and the transfer of $4,829,791 to the reserve account for Howard County Public Schools.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to this effect? Mr. Boyd makes a motion, Ms. Everhart seconds. Questions? I mean, I'll show my ignorance, but what is a membrane bioreactor?
Sewer treatment process.
Sewer treatment, okay.
I'm glad you asked that because I didn't want to.
All right, all in favor, raise your hands or say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And for information only, IAC meeting schedule, Victoria?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Commission. Item 12 is an informational item which contains the proposed dates for IAC meetings occurring in 2025 and the deadlines for materials to be submitted by LEAs for each of these meetings. All deadlines are 4 weeks prior to the IAC meeting that they're being brought to, and all IAC meetings are scheduled for the second Thursday of each month in 2025, as is typical. No meetings were required to be moved due to holidays. So this is just an informational item detailing those dates.
Thanks a lot. All right. Any questions, comments, announcements anyone has? Don't forget next month we're meeting. What's the date, Alex? We're moving our date 1 week back.
Yes,
right?
to Thursday, the 19th of December.
Okay. Also, we're going to probably have some discussions about the possibility of, see how you'll receive it, of a retreat at some point in time, maybe for the day. You get together and talk. There's a lot of opportunities on these meetings to express new ideas or thoughts of how we can do business a little better. So we'll be talking about that maybe next month. Any other thoughts? Do I hear a motion that we adjourn? Secretary Chaudhry and second by Mr. Boyd. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you for your attention, and we'll see you next